Here we are doing a video in a small room.
What's up?
It's gonna be weird because my face is gonna be large because I have to read, but hello. Okay. History, values, philosophy. Anyone want to start?
Go ahead. So maybe we can start. Hey Tori, it's Chris. Just to help you out. Maybe we can start with some of the questions that are in the D12 conversation module thing,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that'll
Prompt
naturally
us.
bring us into some of our artifacts.
Yep.
So, yeah, one of the, interestingly enough, it talks about like sharing like the stereotypes of student affairs and like what are some habits you can cultivate to disrupt these stereotypes. And this last week for Becky's class, I wrote for the current event article. I wrote on the difference between accountability and responsibility in student affairs, and there's some things that were mentioned in that article that I think are stereotypes of student affairs, maybe stereotypes of higher ed. And one of those was that when calls for accountability come, we play the role of the victim and we get really defensive and we act like they aren't valid and all of that. And so I just enjoyed just like looking at that article, and the whole article was based on that we live in a environment that's very like constantly changing and just like really dynamic, and that this whole thing of like waiting for for accountability is really dangerous when we really should be like creating a responsible future for ourselves. So I thought about that when I like read over that question, was like, what are some stereotypes? And I feel like that is one that like whenever something doesn't like side on higher ed, we tend to complain about it rather than change it. And so that's something I feel like once I end graduate school, and I feel like even during graduate school, I know Elise probably can back this up, like that I tend to be a very results driven person. So I tend to like want change to happen and push for that rather than just being willing to just sit back and listen to people complain about like stuff that's wrong, you know.
Was that the Seymour article? Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yeah, it was.
I read through that one too. It was interesting.
It was really good.
When you say accountability, do you mean like with budgets or like money,
I mean, like
or
one of the examples. Well, I think like budgets is one way you can look at it. Another one I saw was like businesses like wanting institutions to show how they're teaching skills that actually
help students prepare
help
them for the
students
workforce?
prepare them for the workforce.
Totally.
That was one that I sort of more connected to. I think the budget thing, I think that's definitely, I mean, there's definitely people saying like, well, why do you need this money? But I think that the one that I really resonated with was the one about how are we teaching students these skills, and then how are we communicating these skills to them so that they can then apply them once they're outside of our institutions, once they graduate.
Well, I think in terms too of like budgets and whatnot, I mean, you could say that, you know, teaching students the difference between responsibility and accountability, you know, is also, with that comes the method of, you know, students being able to advocate for themselves, being like, well, I need this funding for this program because of XYZ, so that when they go out into the real world, they can be like, well, I need the funds to do this or the approval to do this, so I can do XYZ in the workforce. Because a lot of the times, at least from what I've experienced, a lot of times students are like, well, yeah, I really need to do this, but I don't know how to like say that to someone to let them know that I need to do that, or could you do this for me, kind of a thing, you know, because speaking of our generation, a lot of our generation comes from a home environment where, you know, parents do a lot for their students and their children, and it's learning to advocate for oneself.
Mhm.
That I think is an experience of itself.
Which may be indicative of a shift in value from what we have as a field,
Mhm.
and some of the values that students learn and adopt through their family structures. And maybe as a field, it's part of our responsibility to kind of what you were talking about, Darren. Move that from a sense of this is what I've had in the past, and this is what I think I have needed in the past, to a more proactive approach, where students can feel like they can advocate for themselves without necessarily having what do they call them these days, lawnmower parents.
Yeah.
At their side 24/7 to help them figure that out. And maybe that's another stereotype too. These helicopter parents, lawnmower parents. I sometimes feel like a lot of folks in our field lean on that stereotype quite a lot, where perhaps that minimizes some of the experiences that even we have with students, let alone that students have with one another. Um,
I would agree to that because I mean
Mhm.
we're categorizing students and we're placing them where we feel it's the best place to put them because it's easier to view things in categories than sometimes to view people as individuals. Whereas what we need to do a lot of the times in our field is take a step back and really listen to each individual and what their experience is, because what we'll probably find is that their experiences are probably very unique and pertain to them as individuals.
mhm.
Yeah, I think that another thing I appreciate about that article is like it said like a lot of times we view the calls of accountability as like if they're coming from like parents or whatever, that they're like uneducated or over invested,
Mhm.
if they're coming from businesses or corporate, we view it as like, well, they're just after higher education. Um, when in reality, when you look at things that happen, i.e., the situation at Oshkosh and
Mhm.
What's the
Uh,
situation in Oshkosh?
like where they were, what was it, their endowment or their alumni relations people were like giving money to uh, like certain projects without like recording it like properly. So there's this money that's like disappearing rather than actually having a good record of like, how it-
The institution did that, or these
Yeah,
donors on the side did it?
institution,
Okay,
The endowment
chancellor.
managers.
that's interesting.
You should look it up. It's a really interesting situation. But also then like the situation at Louisville where like the athletic department was like basically hosting prostitutes and during recruitment visits and like all this things, like some of these calls for accountability. Oh, we can say like, oh, like they're just after us. Well, there's actually a good reason for it.
Mhm.
And I think that's also a stereotype that sometimes is
Well, it's kind of, I mean,
misconceived.
based off the field in general and that document in 1937 that we read from Jorg's class, where it's like, this is what we
The
are.
tenets of
The tenets of student affairs and how that
yeah.
shifts, but also like how the field itself didn't come out of, like, these competencies are new, and like how we didn't have the foundation of what, I mean, we had the foundation of why we're here to help students, but then how that, like, these ideals of what a parent is and what our role is, and we say we're not the parent, and the faculty think we're babies. I mean, there's just like all this, again, these are all stereotypes, but they come from history, and some stereotypes, there's truth to those, that's why they're stereotype. But then how, yeah, with accountability, I mean, the whole thing is there's not a strong foundation. I mean, there is now, but it's like, how do you shift that viewpoint? It takes time, such a process.
Yeah, and also we work in a field that's so dynamic and so changing. It's like you never really, there's not like that pillar you can anchor on because it shifts so much and
Mhm.
it's constant that you never really have a grounding. I guess that's maybe what these competencies are for,
Right.
is to give us a grounding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to the students. I mean, each year you're going to be interacting with students that are different from the last year.
Mhm.
You know, like
it's interesting to think about some of the stereotypes that we even perpetuate to the students that we work with
Sure.
on a year in year out basis. And reading through the was it the 30 courses that got missed from your grad school experience article or whatever. A lot of them had to do with these, artsy, craftsy, hands-on. I think one of them, was table skirt hanging 101 or something like that, where we kind of perpetuate this. We're all about icebreakers and fun and touchy-feely things.
Mm-hmm.
Where, in communicating some of that stuff to students, maybe that perpetuates some of those other stereotypes, like those certain types of parents,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe as a field, maybe showing some of the other stuff that we do, some of the other good work that's being done,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what functional area it is. I get the sense that we don't really ever tell students about all of the solid academic work that we do to even continue to build up our field. Like, just in my practicum experiences this past fall, I had an opportunity to submit some blog posts to NASPA's socioeconomic and class issues in higher ed knowledge community, but we don't ever tell students about that stuff because I think we as a field, as a profession, kind of assume that students and parents just don't really care about that, which I think is detrimental, right?
Not even that they don't care, but we don't even have a good job of saying what we do. Like,
Well,
like my boyfriend's mom was, there's a baby shower. Anyway, she was like trying to explain, oh, like, where's Elise? And then she said, what do they do? What is she doing? She's like, well, I was trying to say you're like, and like, I'm like, I never even know how to tell people because, well, I don't think they're going to understand because I didn't understand until I was here. So it's like, how do we don't do a good job, like, of what you said, of showcasing what we actually do and the realness, and how do we say that in a sentence so it's not like like I'm a teacher is understandable, we are teachers, but we're where it's like
Yeah.
we got to come up
I
with
think
like an elevator speech that makes sense to the common people who don't necessarily even go to college, like,
I think all this sort of plays into the thing. I think we do a really, really poor job of legitimizing our profession. I think a lot of people think about student affairs and think, oh, you just loved college, you just want to stay in college.
I think people think it's like a principal, like everyone when I say student affairs like, oh, you're going to be a principal because like if you're in administration,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, if you go to grad school after, like, whatever, in any K through 12 system, where I'm like, no, like, and then, but I get what you're saying.
But I think
It's like,
working in student activities, I think we
oh,
just,
totally.
we just like to just throw fun programs,
Which
and they don't.
is true.
I mean,
but
that's,
there's
that's
more
true,
than
but there's a lot
Right.
more to that. There's like there's a lot more that we do that really we fail to. We spend so much time talking about the fun things we do, which is important. It's important to love your job and important to say those things, but I think also that sort of leads to this view of student affairs as a second run.
holistic educate. Like, you need, like, how you were saying with that accountability article and how we have to, like, showcase what we're actually doing. Well, that's what we're doing. Is like we're trying to prepare them where academics only do so much,
Yeah.
and we're the other accountability piece, but we don't know how to say it or like verify it yet, even though we're doing it, and then people don't know how to say like, oh, I got those skills from career services. It's just like I went to college, where it's like,
Mhm.
how do we
Yeah.
connect it for students
I
and
think
parents
I
and
think
ourselves?
For myself, even that sometimes I'm guilty of like looking at myself as a secondary to, or maybe a step behind academic affairs. I don't see myself as, and I think that's not just me. I think it's the field in general. We see ourselves as maybe a step behind them, but
Mhm.
in reality, to be strong, it should be a two-legged thing where like they're one and we're the other, and we're just as important as they are. I mean, in a lot of ways. So
And that requires collaboration and relationships between them.
Well, that's like with Becky's class right now. How there's, I mean, it states that like the reason for being for institutions is teaching, which like makes sense. But how you're saying creating those collaborations, that's the only way we can. That's the only way we can verify our profession is by the relationships and actually like doing things with faculty. Because we say like, oh yeah, I mean, which I get, it does feel separate, but yeah, we have to. Yeah, it's hard.
Which might help out with that responsibility piece too. Like if you can, on the front end of things, show the public, show accountability boards, so on and so forth, that it's not serious academic stuff and then happy fun playtime over here.
Yeah.
that they're actually working together. It helps build that case.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess the next one, next question was, as you engage in your job search, how do you learn about the values, philosophies, and histories of the institution departments you're applying to? How do you know if there's a
That's
fit?
funny.
How do you know if there's what?
A fit.
Yeah.
Fit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can until you're there. Like you can do research, but people are gonna tell you whatever they want to get you to come here.
Yeah.
And like obviously, yeah, if you're trying to recruit and you're a good recruiter, you're not gonna like go into the battles between the faculty and like
You just don't talk about that.
no, or you like state it in a way that's like, well, I mean, if you're, I don't know how you do that. I mean, you ask pointing questions that like around value, like I don't know.
I also think
Yeah,
talking to like the students that
Mhm.
are actually at the institution that can look at it from
Yeah, they'll be straight up.
yeah, like most of the time students are pretty honest, in the sense that they'll tell you what is it like, working in the Department of Residence Life, or what kind of events and stuff do you have going on campus, or how's inclusivity, how's diversity on
Mhm.
campus. They'll be pretty honest with that. Whereas if you're talking to someone who's representing, a department, like a director, assistant director,
Right.
they're gonna tell you like the good things, and they're not like you said, they're not gonna tell you like the bad things. I think also too, like talking to people that are currently like in the position you're applying for is good practice too, because you can kind of hear like what their experiences have been, and they might be able to give you a little more honest answer in terms of, this is how the department is.
Assuming you have those connections, right?
Right. But even like I'm saying, like if you go to like an on-campus interview and you have the opportunity to talk to those individuals,
Mhm.
or if like you're going to a job fair like OPE or TPE or something like that, and those individuals come to that's a great opportunity to ask them about that.
Mhm.
I think also when you talk about fit, I think about even like, well, why did we choose our undergrad? It's because for me at least, it's you have a gut feeling that like, oh, this is right. And I think that's something I've learned not only through like undergrad, but also through like just different jobs I've had. Is like one thing I know is don't ever ignore your gut. If your gut's telling you no,
Mm-hmm.
there's probably a good reason. And I mean, that's not based on, it's based on everything, like there's a reason why you don't feel right about a place. And if you don't feel right about a place, it's probably not right. So I mean, that's really taking all of this out of it. But I mean, I think that is a way that you know if a place is right or not.
I have thoughts about the concept of fit as well. Like I sometimes get the impression, and maybe this is a little bit of Kenny rubbing off on us, but I sometimes get the impression that this concept of fit works against candidates as well, in the way that employers perceive either the visible or perceived qualifications or interactions between candidates and the employers. Where like I sometimes think that fit helps employers and sometimes candidates hide very serious divisions that should exist.
What's an example of that?
So one example of that is, let's say, I work in residence life. So let's say I'm hiring for a team of 6 hall directors. Do I hire a team of 6 hall directors who all fit the same exact bill, or do I potentially hire some folks that might challenge the department to grow and continue to develop? Where I think, if looking for a fit is great, if you're a candidate and if you're looking for a place to be comfortable in, but I sometimes question especially for me as a straight white cis het man, like, am I using fit to feel comfortable, or am I using fit to continue to do good work with students? Am I using fit to, like, what agenda is there with fit?
Right.
That's always made me think of like for me, like I want to be somewhere where I can get a sense of like I'm going to gain something, because like if I'm just gonna go somewhere that I'm used to and feel like it's just gonna be a repeat of like the previous years, in the sense that I'm not going to be challenged to do better, then why should I be working there? I mean, I'm not at that point in my life where I'm just like, you know what, I'm cozy, I'm just gonna do my thing, do my job, live life. Like I'm still at the point where like I'm trying to figure out like, who am I as a professional? Like, I mean, granted, we've spent like 2 years talking about that, and we've had like the opportunity to like talk a little more about that, but I don't think that just stops once you find like your job right after grad school. Like, if anything, I think like this is just the beginning. Like, that's our next step. Like, and then hopefully from there, whether if your journey like ends there, if you're comfortable there, then great. But for other people, it's doing that for a few years, figuring out what's right for you, figuring out what you believe in, what's personal to you, and then exploring more from there. That's what I'd like to see fit as, because I'd like to see fit as something like where you can, like what we were talking about with Martin earlier, like how can you benefit that institution, but then also how can they benefit you? Something mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, how do you, I get yours, but I'm challenged, or like, for me, it's all about the people. And so like you can,
and maybe
I
it's
don't know.
different for everyone.
Totally, and that
like
makes sense.
maybe for what fit is for me is completely different than what it would be
Right.
for Darren or for you or
Right.
for Chris. Like, if it's truly what they say it is, maybe it's a really individualized thing. Like, when you'll know.
But if I like make connections with people, and if like everything, like how you're saying, Darren, in my gut is like, not even gut, but I am like butting up with my, I don't know, and like everything there's, I don't know, just how they're vibing is not, like, yes, that would be uncomfortable for me. Yeah, but I guess, like, at how much discomfort is worth, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I'm a verbal processor, so maybe I didn't make it clear before. A lot of my issues with fit come from employer perspectives. Like, as a candidate, you absolutely need to do whatever it is that you can to protect yourself, protect your identities, and your life. In your job search. My big beef comes when employers use fit as a reason to not hire somebody.
Got it.
Like, as a white man, especially, I can and probably should accept and look for more discomfort than I do in my everyday life, where that's not at all what a number of other people with other varying identities, and I think that speaks to what you were talking about before, Logan, where fit for a candidate may be a whole number of different things. But especially from hearing employers talk about fit, it's I don't know, a little culturally disconcerting sometimes.
Right.
Right, because it's like, what does that mean? Does that mean like fit for them and like, okay, this is what we're looking for and you fit the bill, so that's why we're hiring you?
Right.
Or is it like, oh, I personally would like to work with them and I feel like they'd be good for our team. That's what fit is for me. So it's very
Well, it's very subjective.
right.
And I think
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Regardless of if you even use the word fit,
Mm-hmm.
we all have our. I mean, like if you, I get like what you're saying, and I totally get. I've heard people say that, like
Mhm.
the fit situation, but we're doing that every single second. Like if we're all on this hiring committee right now, like I'm gonna have my perspective, which is my fit lens,
Mhm.
even though you're not saying it, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm like,
But it's
Right.
more
If you
more than
use it
just a
as-
single
yeah.
person
And-
though.
yeah.
Like it takes an organization to make that
Yeah.
decision. It's like when the organization itself,
right.
like ends up hiding behind fit to justify,
They're just
um,
they're hiring decisions.
which at the same time, like I get to a large extent. Like one of the institutions I'm applying to work at is this more religiously faith-based organization.
Mhm.
I joke with a lot of my nearest friends, you know, I'm heathen right here, non-believer.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't say that to people on
Right.
the outside, quote unquote. But like, as an organization, you also don't want that constant uphill battle.
Right.
But especially, you know, if we're, you know, to tie it back to some of our competencies, like, is this what's best for our students? Like, is our philosophy and our values aligned to our students or to our professional comfort? Which, you know, we as a cohort have had a lot of conversations about, you know, issues that we have with professional dress and attire. I think it's a fairly similar type of conversation. For whose benefit are we doing these things?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think something I struggle with, even in my current department, is when you're hiring or when you're looking for a fit, are you looking for somebody who's just like you because that's going to be an easy person to work with because everything you float is going to fly and
Sure.
that's just the way it's going to work?
Yeah.
Or are you looking for someone who's going to do best for the students?
Mhm.
And in my opinion, that's somebody who's going to, you know, have a set of values that are student based, that's going to challenge things that maybe they see as something that maybe isn't aligning quite right and isn't going to be afraid to bring that up, and that's going to maybe not make for the most comfortable conversations all the time.
Yeah.
But I think just looking for people who are just like you and creating that team can lead to groupthink and can be really detrimental. I think you need to have enough of a difference in a team to be able to look at it from different perspectives.
Mhm.
I think Paul used to always say, whenever you make a decision, you have to think about who you're leaving out. And that's something I hope I never forget, is like when you're making a decision, don't just think about, all right, this is cool, I'm going to be comfortable here, but think about the people who are different than you that maybe won't be. And so I think that's something that goes with fit, maybe more from the point of view of being on a hiring committee, like looking at candidates. Like, are you looking for somebody that's going to just blend in with a team and going to not challenge you, or are you looking for somebody that has that one thing that your team needs that maybe is different than everything you have? So
It's possible too that I'm just a big old agitator. I might be off base. but I would echo all the things that you're saying. And maybe that speaks to some of the experiences that you had in your mini internship, working with one person that was fairly similar to you, and one person that was diametrically opposite, but still potentially.
Well, I think that comes from working in a regular internship. I mean, look at me and Elise. You can come up with two more opposite personalities,
But we're a good team.
but we're a good team, and
Mhm.
that's because we are opposite. And we see things from different lenses, and like that's what I mean. It's like since I worked in student involvement, I've never been on a team where all three of us were the same.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because my director or my assistant director and myself, or my supervisor and myself, are two very different people. But still, it's always been very different personalities on a team, and it's led to really good working relationships.
Makes me think of our RA teams.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I know, like, specifically, like, last year, like, we just as a department, we were really intentional about getting people of various different personality types and, you know, interests, and because, right, you want people who can relate to students, and you don't just want the same group of people there. You want someone who can relate to students on multiple levels. You know, you want someone who's good with, like, groups of students. You want someone who's better with, like, reaching out to students that prefer more, like, individualized one-on-one time. You know, like, that's so important.
We've got a lot of ag students on campus, but that's not at all representative of our RA population.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think that intentionality is very powerful, and commits to a lot of the values that we have as a field too.
Why do you think there's not egg students who apply to BRAs?
Oh man, that's a good question.
I think a lot of it has to do with the type of student that's an ag student. A lot of them are first generation college students. A lot of them come from farms. They're probably, rather than looking for jobs on or off campus, are probably going home every weekend and working on the farm
yeah.
and helping at home, and that's their employment rather than looking for
It'd be
something.
interesting
on
to,
campus.
like-
I don't know. That's my
No,
that's
makes
my
sense.
perception. I might be totally off base, but
No, I think you're on base with that, but I also think too that there's a lot of information about, like, what exactly the RA position does and what it's all about that's often misconstrued to students. Where, like, I've heard some students say, like, oh no, I can't be an RA next year. I'll never be able to go home for the weekend. And it's like, that's not true.
Yeah.
You know, like yes, we want you to be here on some of the weekends so you can build community with your residents and, you know, show them that you can have fun on the weekends here, but we're not keeping you here. You know, this isn't a prison. We're not keeping you here and requiring you to stay here every single weekend. You know, like,
That'd be interesting to, like, since y'all know that, or like to do a campaign or some sort of. Do you have any students who are egg students or farmers? Because
we have a couple that
Yeah.
are RAs.
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to get their story, or like, because there's a living learning. I mean, I don't know. I just think it'd be interesting if you know certain demographics that students
Yeah.
aren't, and how, I mean, like, assessment, or like how to, like,
and especially here at River Falls, because if you don't
you should have
tap into that community, you're
I know they're
missing a huge chunk of campus. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of students that you don't have
Should do
an
a res
RA
hall.
that.
out on the farm. Like, so then they work on the farm and live on the farm.
As we.
I'm
Some
just
pretty-
kidding, but,
Some
like-
pretty innovative thinking there, at least.
Yeah, like,
It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And money.
I know. Just move the living learning community out there. And then that's a part of their job is to work on the farm.
Build your own
It'd
shelter.
be cool, like a homestead.
Build a little village.
I think your question is really great, Elise. In our EBI survey, there was a question on there in the spring about why did or didn't you apply to become a resident assistant? And some of the feedback that came back to us was exactly, you know, a lot of our ag students are going home to
Yep.
help out with the family farms. And another big problem was marketing what the RA position was. Where
Which
students,
we've done a lot more to push towards
Mhm.
Yeah, I like your
different groups of students
whatever it's called, your
um,
campaign with the individual RAs.
this year.
And I think too, I think we bump a lot of candidates out of the interviewing process as well. Like
Mhm.
we have, at least the last 2 years that we've been here, there have been fairly stout candidate pools, but are our interviewing practices actually in alignment with some of the values that we have as a department? Are we holding things like dialects and accents and lived experiences against some candidates who might otherwise be able to contribute quite a lot to what we're trying to do? It's a rabbit hole that Kenny will go down
Yeah.
with you if you want any
Right.
day of the week.
No, it's interesting. Have you guys ever thought of? Sorry, no, I don't know. Of like like doing a dual RA ship where there's 2 RAs per floor and they're halftime. Again,
Like per semester?
no, like they share a room and they switch off weekends and stuff like that. Of like a because it's only 15 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking. Again, this is not probably real or anything that could be done, but just within the commitment, I feel like a lot of you get room and board. I mean, like that is a pretty sweet deal that a lot of jobs can't offer.
Mm-hmm.
But I do get the responsibility is high as well. So people have to make choices, and I totally get that. But I think it's like, it's such a, yeah. I mean, the way we've done things in the past because of these values that have been set for us and how higher ed works, of like trying to think innovatively is sometimes challenging to do.
Oh yeah.
Especially, I mean, we get that. Any new idea is often hard to conceptualize when it's not the way it's always been done. But
You want to talk about like how our work connects to the competencies for a little bit? I think we're at like about 40 minutes here, so.
yeah,
We're close.
I guess one that I really sort of focused on was the ability to synthesize the professional's history or profession's history and how those historical contexts then like have guided the profession from various perspectives. And one of the papers that I brought back to connect to this was my archival research project on Kent State as a catalyst for change, and how that situation, how that really then led to students having more rights and students like having more of a voice on campus, and just like the split in history at that point with like how the outside world saw students as one thing, but they were really like they were trying to get rights on campus, and like really how that was a fork in the road that really led to a whole different environment in higher education.
I think that project too, I wrote that as like, I hated the project. I spent way too much time in the archives, but the lady and me are now, I see her and I wave. But like similar to you of like how looking to history and seeing how like that we are living history right now. Obviously like there's a lot of things in our lives, but in life, like how we don't think of it as a movement until after. And so how we're in a pivot, like how one of the competencies is societal cultural context as well as like civic engagement, and how within this being a part of college campus right now in our jobs, like we get to do this work every day and have an impact within like how there's just like so much stuff that with Trump and with some there's like a lot of things that we get to experience with the students. And so like being a part, or like I really enjoyed being able to do like the civic engagement piece for voting this year, because like so many students have never voted and the process is super confusing, especially when you're from Minnesota and now you're here. And so I just did a little campaign, but I was like, I think known as like the voting girl, because people like at the desk would say, hey Elise, would you mind talking? I appreciated that because I felt like I was actually like making a difference with individual people. which I don't get to do a lot of time, which I can and I should get more involved in like my civic duties. But I think understanding it, because I did like the Equal Rights Amendment and how the American Association of University Women at River Falls, what they did here. It's real super interesting. But like that piece of understanding that the history that we're living right now is important, or what we do with students like affects their futures. So they'll look back on that as a part of history. It's kind of cool.
And I think too, just like, I know it's cliche, but you hear it all the time that history repeats itself.
Yeah.
And I think
We're
it's
seeing
interesting to have the knowledge of the 1960s and the 1970s and what happened then, and then to be living in the time we are now and seeing what's happening.
Well, as educators, or like
even like at Berkeley, like last week with the white supremacist was supposed to speak on campus and the violent demonstrations that followed that. I couldn't help but think back to like the 1960s and 1970s and just thinking like, all right, are we heading down that path again? Like,
I don't
so
even know
I-
if we've left it though. It's just been subdued.
yeah,
But like, yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
you know, I just
Dude.
Well, suppressed.
mhm.
Those like, as white people saying it's over. You know, Obama. We have a black president. What do you mean? Anyway, I don't gotta get into it.
Nudge.
yeah. But yeah, that's really real.
So
Mhm.
I don't know. I just enjoyed. I really enjoy history personally, and so I like to think of how the context of history like sort of repeating itself in a way. So.
I think that's a great observation. You got me thinking about my archival research paper, which magical fun. But even just explaining kind of what I want to do with my professional future, it's not a secret that I don't plan on staying in residence life forever. And thinking back to my archival research paper, which had to do with UW-La Crosse's development as this aspiring social justice educating machine, thinking about all the different cogs that needed to be put into place and who they needed to be put into place by. Nudge, nudge, white men.
Yeah.
Like it really helps to be able to know that so that we can explain that to students who will then hopefully be able to have some idea of the progress and the work that we've made so that hopefully we don't have to go back to violent demonstrations of the 60s where police don't need to be hosing people down in the middle of the street. It's not a shower.
Yeah. No, it's just I find it interesting you mentioned stuff with like the 1960s and the 70s because that kind of ties into I did mine on the Americans with Disabilities Act
Mm-hmm.
and how even just kind of like, and I specifically did like UWRF and like what have they done to kind of like comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act and even which I think you and I have talked about this multiple times, just like the level of work that needs to be done to accommodate students with disabilities so they can get access just
To the front door.
to buildings, to the
Yeah.
front door, to
Yep. To exist.
yeah.
I think the crazy part too, what you kind of, or the interesting part, what you mentioned about La Crosse and like the history of their social justice journey, or I don't know what you call it, but like so Nathan and chatting with him about like his journey within just the Check Yourself camp. I mean, there's been all this flack, and today he had to have a meeting with like University Communications because they have not. Sorry, I don't know if don't share that. I don't think it's like he wouldn't care, but he just anyway. I'm super interested in this, and it has to do with my project. So like we communicate a lot about just life and like what's happening in his life because it's like pretty normal, I think, for a lot of predominantly white institutions. But the thing that's interesting is like the Check Yourself campaign is taken from La Crosse, but also we've done this before. Like when I was a student, we had the same exact poster. We just changed, you know, and how when that program we did a lot of there was a huge focus on the universal design and like educating students about that. I mean, there was just a whole social justice programmer, but then how that goes away, and then like people forget
Yeah,
about that.
I have often wondered, like, if Ashley faced the same flack that Nathan's facing.
Right, and
Like,
I'm sure she did.
I don't know. I mean, I never heard about it. I
Totally.
was an undergrad too, so
Totally.
maybe I just wasn't connected.
Right, but how again, like if things go away for a second, but then come back as in this new like threatening, I don't know, to our institution, it's just very interesting. And like a lot of these articles are not from people around here; they're like trolls on the internet. But still, it's oh no, like they're all from Georgia and like around the world. But that piece to me is very interesting of how it's like not something new, but it is new, and it's like new. I don't know, of how like history can be lost very fast, and then when you bring back the principles that need to happen, it's like threatening once again. Or like I'm sure Ashley probably went through, you know,
Yeah.
similar things, but
It's interesting to note that the white men that started a lot of the stuff at UW La Crosse met, you know, even by today's standards, relatively little abstinence. Like a lot of students just didn't really understand
Right.
kind of what the stuff was, but there weren't, you know, hearings or committees
Right.
to talk about, you know, well, is this overreaching our bounds too far? Are we wrong?
right,
A lot of it happened in the 1960s where that's just what
Right.
happened. Where it gets me to think about whose voices, how we treat different voices differently based off of that context. Where a lot of these white men at UW La Crosse were praised for their magical efforts, even though there are other folks at other institutions that were doing much,
Yeah.
I don't want to say better work, but work that
revolutionary
was-
and like
yeah,
innovative. Yeah,
with different identities.
totally.
So even, you know, when Ashley did work here and did do a lot of this stuff, I think it'd be intriguing to learn kind of what the overall experience was.
Right.
Well, I know that she had undergraduate interns. They did what do they call it even?
Peace
The
program.
peace program, and like, they go
King
in and talk to-
Nonviolence. Yeah.
Yeah, the Kingian Nonviolence stuff. And they
Training.
go in and talk to different student groups, student organizations. I mean, it was a pretty big production for a couple of years there, and then it sort of, I don't know what happened.
Well, it's budget. I mean, when she left, her budget line just disappeared with the no money that was like, you know.
Of course.
It's interesting though.
And then thinking about how that aligns supposedly with what we're doing as a field.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
But I think that goes right along with campus and civic engagement, like trying to educate students to
Be
Not-
humans.
to be
They,
yeah
that
be
should
civil,
be.
be civil
That's what we
humans.
should say. We educate students to be humans outside of an academic setting.
Mhm.
Great. Because that's really what I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It's not a
And-
word for
and I
that,
find it
like,
I find it interesting,
civic
especially
citizens or whatever.
You know what? Don't say well. Yes, we didn't say citizens. We used to have to do this in continuum. And the last one was like an active citizen. We called it an engaged community member because a lot of our students were international students and didn't
Oh,
identify
yeah.
as citizen.
Ah,
Anyway, we never thought about it until
Yeah.
this woman said like, "Well, I'm not a citizen." I'm like, "That's really true."
Uh-huh.
And it's like from a national organization. We told them they haven't changed it. It's fine.
Big shocker.
But
I find it interesting though too. Just one more thing about like River Falls is where cuts happen. Like we have this whole thing about inclusivity and diversity and all of this, and that's what we say we are. But then you look back a couple of years, we had the destination program, where we'd send groups of students to Florida to work with immigrants in this community down there, and they would live side by side with them for a week. And I mean, I don't know of a program that taught civic engagement more than what that did. But then when budget cuts come, where do they cut? They cut from the things that go along with their mission and their vision statement, and it's like, well, wait, that's what you need to keep. Like that's what's important, you know. And it's not just because I was a trip leader for this program for 6 times. It's because like that's what impacted students the most. And, like so, I always find it interesting, especially even then like this year we were talking about. There was talk about cutting the LEAD campaign. Like, well, that's again, it's a civic engagement campaign. It's what's important. It's what needs to be kept, but it's the easiest thing to cut.
Yeah. It's still gonna take place, I think, in the future, but just it's not gonna have the same look or the same like. But yeah, things get changed, like you said, dynamic every day. where
So
it's
what do
like-
you think? Why do you think it is that they cut those things first? Is it because they feel like those aren't essential to?
I think destination was the most money,
Well,
And, like-
yeah, destination was a ton of money.
and based off of what you like from from what we know as an entity of a student involvement or student life, what do you have to provide? Student orgs are going to be there. There's
Mhm.
lots of student orgs, and then like homecoming can't go away. There are certain things where it's like if we strip down bare bones to what we can do with the capacity of people that were there, they had to like make some really tough choices.
And I'm not saying that like this in a really negative way.
No,
because,
but
like
it does
obviously
blow. Yeah,
obviously the chancellor, I mean,
he
him and his wife were on a destination or
Like,
went and
yeah.
visited a destination trip in Florida. I mean, they obviously had a connection to the program,
right.
but it's still like a interesting observation to make when cuts come, like where they come at.
Real kick in the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes back to the governance stuff that we're talking about
Yeah.
in Becky's class.
Yeah, totally. Where are the rich people putting the money?
Fun fact: our annual endowment here at.
Oh yeah, how much? I'm doing my paper on endowments.
Uh,
It's really interesting to
I am
me.
too.
Okay, nice. Super interesting.
Is like 21 million.
Oh really? That's more than I thought.
Super low.
That's more than I thought though for River Falls.
Mm-hmm. It might be like 22. It's based off of last year's number, so I don't know.
That
what
seems
it
like a lot.
What was the rising to distinction like goal?
That's a capital campaign. That's nothing to do with endowment.
Nothing to do with
is.
endowment.
You know what UW Madison's?
Well, yeah, but like,
Almost 2.5 billion.
well, there's only 1.6 out of all the institutions in the world that have over $1 billion, and 16 of them
Mhm.
are public and 46 are private. Where it's like, it makes sense to me.
But
They
it,
said
ma-
the average is around 10 million or more. At least the article I read. I don't know.
but it makes it really makes you wonder though, like with those sorts of tough budget cuts though, like are there other ways to
Yeah.
continue to be able to
But you can't go into your endowment a lot of times. And they're
Un-
like, and it's like, you're
understood that's not where I'm
okay,
going.
sorry.
But you know, endowments gets me thinking about money.
Right.
like, While higher ed is often strapped for funding in a lot of different ways, there are certain types of funding that are grossly underutilized in our campus. And I talked to Greg about this last semester, but you know, $504 relating to diversity education and activism, grossly underutilized on this campus. Like we just don't apply for all that much.
But is there a person writing grants? Like, they have people in those roles to get the money? That's like the other part.
We have people in positions that can do that.
Okay. But they just don't choose
they
to get
just-
those grants or
Yeah,
go for
our-
those grants.
Our institution just doesn't have them do that.
Yeah. Makes sense based off what I know.
And like we're 2.5 weeks into the budgeting and finance class. There's-
No, I'm just saying like that makes sense. I'm from River Falls is like
Yeah.
people as to why like that doesn't surprise me that they would not go for those grants. That's what I mean to say.
We're turning things around though. The Falcon leadership.
Is it still called that? Impact program?
Unfortunately, yeah.
The flip? Okay.
hmm
I don't think it's necessarily bad.
It's a derogatory term for Filipino folks.
That's true. Why do they always sorry.
Yeah. it's
Okay.
it's problematic.
And then dibs, I like thought this was okay when I say dibs,
it's ice cream.
ice cream,
Mm.
but
I
when
think How I Met Your Mother.
No,
Oh.
yeah, but see, exactly. And what is that? What is that derogatory towards women?
Mhm.
And that's like what
Claim of
I
ownership.
right. That's what I instantly thought of
Oh,
because Nathan was telling me today that Martin was like, "Oh, we should get shirts like I've got dibs," and that to me like struck like ugh, I don't think you can do that, especially as your office.
Mm.
Because to me, that instantly, whenever anyone says dibs, I think of like as a woman, I think of a man saying that.
Yeah,
It's interesting,
that's
but
fair.
I mean, ice cream. It's cool. That's cute.
Mhm.
I get that, but it really does. I mean, acronyms.
The unintended implications that
Yeah.
often undercut a lot of those values and philosophies.
hmm
That office needs to get its.
Why can they not change the name of the flip program?
I don't know that they can't. I think that because they already have secured the grant,
They
that's
can't,
just
yeah.
what it's called for now. My understanding is that it's a UW system grant. It's not a
Got it.
federal grant.
So it's like leadership impact program, and then you put your mascot
Yeah.
in front of it. Okay.
I think that's how it works anyway. The whole grant itself is like a page and a half long.
For
It's
real?
really short.
Wow. Well, good for them for getting money.
Cool.
And call it something better.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Well, good discussion. I think we're
Yeah, we're probably
Oh.
good.
Did it log
Oh
you out?
no, it still's recording.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we're good. Bye, Tori.
Bye.
Bye.